3 years after the successful debut of the Stark Future Varg MX bike, the Spanish company is back with their second offering called the Varg EX. Now, this is heavily focused towards enduro riders, but also takes a lot of inspiration from the Varg MX that we've seen for the past 3 years now. Both JB and I have our personal Stark Varg MX bikes, and we've logged quite a bit of time on them, both in stock trim and both JBI spec form, that being a motocross setup specifically optimized to myself and JB. Today's video, we're going to heavily focus on the all-new Stark Varg EX.
It looks rad. I mean, my first impression on the MX bike, what a good bike for a first model year. You know, usually stuff gets overlooked, but that bike came off the assembly line very competitive. So my immediate second thought was, what's revision 2 going to look like? And I know that isn't this, but we get to see some updates they made specific to this EX model, which we may see on the next MX bike. But the updates they did do are freaking awesome. And I can't wait to get into the details about what they did and why they did it and the results of it on the bike.
I think the big ticket item here is the extra 20% increase in range. The Varg MX bike is spec'd out with a 6.5 kilowatt battery. The new EX model has a 7.2 kilowatt hour battery. Now, right off the bat, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, oh, I just can't wait to get my hands on one of these batteries and swap into my MX bike. Nope, the chassis is different and it will not retrofit the current Varg MX bikes. They had to make some alterations to the chassis just to suit and to be able to mount that extra battery. I'm sure if they kept the same chassis, it'd be more of a jam and not a jelly.
So if you check out our shop on Google Maps, you'll see a ravine right behind us, and we commonly may ride our Stark Vargs behind there. I usually run about 40 horsepower and like 20% regen, and man, I can ride up and down those trails for many hours before the bike goes from 100% even down to like 50. Now it's very low speed, low roll speed, not using a lot of power, but the battery life really stands there. However, you can allude to when you ride Glen Helen. It's a very different track. Just to give you guys some insight to kind of like realistic ride times that we're achieving. What do you get at Glen Helen when you ride?
I would say I could roughly do a 40-minute moto. Pretty much race pace, not stopping, not taking any breaks or anything like that. But one of the key tricks is to keep that sucker charged in between motos. So we're not going to tell you guys where the outlets are at Glen Helen, but there are some. And if you do have a Varg, you got to find those outlets and plug it in pretty much every moto. And they have a really cool chart displaying how much ride time you can roughly get depending on the type of riding that you're doing, whether it's enduro, hard enduro, or even skill level. They break it down by pro, I think it's amateur and beginner. Now at Red JBI, we heavily focus on suspension, of course. And one of the things that really struck us while reading the press release for this bike is this bike sits a little bit lower than the Varg MX. The Varg MX is equipped with KYB Triple S suspension up front and the KYB rear shock out back. The same goes for the Varg EX, but it has a little bit less suspension travel. The Varg EX has 300 millimeters of suspension travel up front and 303 out back. For instance, the Varg MX is 310 up front and I think 310 in the rear.
Yes, yep, it'd be right around that. We're hoping and likely it's going to be unique, meaning what's on the EX will not be the motocross style valving, because we even found the stock moto valving to be a little chattery on small bumps. So likely, I think we can expect is some good KYB off-road specs. For our moto setups, we have found the stock spring rates to be off by a rate. So by that, I mean, if you are 150 pounds and you tell them that's the springs you want, for moto, we find those to be off by an entire rate. You'd want to go up from there.
Well, I'm glad you said that because one of the talking points in the PR video that Stark Future put out earlier today was they did a lot of testing with their factory rider, Taddy Blazuziak, to optimize the new Varg EX suspension towards that type of riding. So all of the valving is specific and spring rates is specific for that style of riding. It is not the same internals, the valving that is from the Varg MX bike, thrown onto this EX bike and said, have fun, it's insanely stiff. Nope, they went ahead, made it plush, made it soft, for the difference in terrain that you're going to be encountering between a motocross bike and an enduro bike.
What I was really happy to see was their feature of the adjustable mapping, I guess adjustable power curve. I say that because what we learned is if you run a lot of power on your Stark, you may have a hard time keeping that rear wheel from breaking loose. And that can have a big effect on how your suspension handles or doesn't handle because you're fighting for traction. So it sounds like you have the opportunity now to kind of adjust the power curve. Can you go more into that?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm probably the most excited about. And I'm hoping this also transfers to the Varg MX that we currently own. It is quite a bit different now with them having an all new phone as well.
Yeah.
So quite a bit different as far as the how it's going to look on the screen. But yeah, you can adjust the power curve. So if you want to limit your Varg to, let's say, 60 horsepower, but you want it to build maybe a little bit linear, a little bit slower through the power, you can go ahead and do that. Or if you want that thing to just be screaming like a bat out of hell right at the crack of the throttle, you can go ahead and do that as well. And the same goes for the regenerative braking as well. So again, I'm assuming if you want to cap it at, let's say, 50% regenerative braking, but you kind of want it to build up a little bit, you can go ahead and do that. Now, to stick with the new phone, you also get some different, let's say, new tech. One of the most notable being a GPS navigation system.
That's
and
cool.
It'll tell you turn by turn. If you have a pre-programmed trail or a route, it'll tell you, hey, there's a left turn coming up in X amount of distance. And you can go ahead and log your rides, log your data, and create new trails and save them to the new Stark phone app and new phone. So that's super cool just because no other dual sport bike comes with that off the showroom floor. Like even the KTM 500 EXCFs, like great bikes off the showroom floor. That's pretty much the motocrosser's dual sport bike.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come with some of these knickknacks and little goodies that Stark Future throws in right off the bat.
For sure. Those type of features tend to be reserved for the big adventure touring bikes, so like the KTM 1090s or Triumph touring bikes and those styles. So it's cool to see them take inspiration from that style of the bike and implement it into our much more sportier dual sport.
You know, this company just seems to keep on impressing because they took the online configurator and customization even a step further than that. New for the Varg EX is the choice of tires. And to go along with that is the Stark tubes and the option of mousses as well. Now, if you guys own a Stark Varg, you probably know that the Stark power tube isn't the best. I do commend them for going out and making a really light tube, but it's really prone to flats and punctures.
What do you call it? A misnomer? Like jumbo shrimp? Like
Yes.
There's nothing jumbo about shrimp that's small. So call it a power tube. They should call it like the feather tube.
Yeah.
Really lightweight, which is awesome, but no, by no means like
Yep.
the power tube. I was really surprised to see that they're running a 140/80 by 18 rear tire because our bikes can stock with the 110. And I know we've been wanting to go to as wide as tire as possible to help really get that power to the ground. Maybe that won't be needed as much anymore if we can get our phones to be updated with that new kind of power curve app. I assume tells us that Stark realizes, hey, we need the biggest tire we can get on this thing to lay down all the contact print. And especially for off-road guys when you need to wheelie on a moment's notice to get over a log or any feature you may find on the trail. So this will help limit probably tire spin a lot and get that front end up a lot higher.
Moving on to some of the smaller features of the new bike, but smaller but really cool because it's the small things in life that make things really cool. One of my favorite things is the integration of the new handguards. The new handguard mounts to the brake master cylinder, which is super freaking cool. So all you have to do is take off your lever, put the handguard on, drop your bolt back in, and you're good to go. So it's just simple as pie, and it looks really slick as well, just because there's one less thing attached to the bar. And speaking of the bars are slightly different. I saw that there is internal cable routing for the handlebars now. Super cool feature, but I do think when it comes to working on the bike, it might take a little extra time just to finagle the wire through the bars, but I do really like that touch. And I feel like they're taking some inspiration from the mountain bike world where we see internal cable routing through the freaking frames of the bike. Sticking with up front, this bike, of course, has a headlight with integrated blinkers into the front number plate. Super cool. That's only for, I think, Europe and maybe the oceanic regions as well. In the US, you do kind of have to run some pointy guys sticking out the side. So it's a bit of a bummer there. Obviously, it'll vary a little bit depending on your country and regulations within that country. But super cool that they integrated those right off the bat. And then for the headlight, it has a 4,000 lumen headlight, which is absolutely bright. So if you want to go blind, just turn this sucker on and look straight into it.
Cluster control, which is what we're normally used to for adjusting maps and turning the bike on, but then it also integrated the blinker system and the lights into there as well.
And then you also have a horn. So if you guys take your Varg EX onto the track, try to pass someone and give them a little beep beep, let them know that you're there. That's one of the things that I wish my Varg MX had, just because even if you're on a Varg and there's a Varg behind you and they're trying to make a pass, you have no idea that they're there.
Yeah.
So a simple hoot and holler makes the whole process a lot easier. I know for your gas guys, you're probably just like,
Every time Anthony passes me on the track, I get a little woo or on your right. So it's quite nice, to be honest with you, to know somebody's there. Because we have seen a few videos now of people just being in just an untimed spot and maybe kind of colliding with people.
mm-hmm.
So I think that'd be quite helpful, especially out on the trail as well, man. Like there's single track is only so wide sometimes. If you're going to be trying to get around somebody, you really need to make your move and know they know you're there.
As I was looking through some of the pictures of the bike, I noticed a new chain guide. And the new chain guide is just super freaking sleek. I think the chain guide on the Varg MX, it's not the most flattering looking. I feel like there's a lot of room for debris or dirt or something like that to just get into the chain and cause a lot of gunk. The new one is a lot more enclosed, so it protects the chain a little bit more. I know
Nice.
It's probably only this wide, but then again, just kind of nitpicking and seeing what these guys are doing.
Yeah, their attention to detail, they haven't really overlooked anything, which is just awesome. But for all the fit and finishes, I already thought they were good, and they seem to keep improving upon the small areas here and there.
Yeah, and speaking of improving upon, I mean, the Varg MX comes with a formula rear brake master cylinder, whether that's on the foot brake or the hand brake. Gone is that for the Varg EX. It's a full Brembo unit. So
nice.
Yeah, so just a little bit of an upgrade. For instance, that formula unit comes on the KTM 85 SX. That'd be the 1714 and the 1916. So just to give you guys a little bit of context as to other bikes throughout, we see that formula master cylinder on. So big upgrade there as well.
And what were you sharing with me about for U.S. imported bikes? It's got to come with a foot brake. It can't have a hand rear brake on it, at least for the importation of it.
Correct. Yeah. So if you are in the U.S., which this bike is road legal for some of the U.S., I think California will be one of those states where it's going to take some extra time to get these things approved to be road legal. But if you do order one and you are in the U.S., it is mandatory that you do have a rear foot brake. But Stark Future and those guys, again, just continue to impress and are super cool. They'll actually throw in the rear handbrake option for free, no extra charge. But again, it's illegal if you do use it on the road. But if you're riding your Varg EX just purely off-road and you want that rear handbrake, go ahead and throw that on there, again, for no extra charge.
Yeah, I'd run the handbrake all day after we got used to it. That's why I know about the trails behind our shop. Well, I knew about them before then, but that's why I started riding them, because when I got the foot brake, I rode it for a bit. I rode Anthony's bike with the handbrake, and I could tell it was such a game changer on having the ability to have your hand right there at all times and the ability to modulate the rear brake much more sensitive than it can with the foot. So we spent a good couple of days behind the shop, just each day for about 20, 30 minutes riding the trails to really relearn my muscle memory. And man, after a couple of rides, handbrake all day on the rear. It's so much easier to really lock your feet in place and just focus on your acceleration points, your acceleration points, your braking points, and just kind of your overall technique on your bike. I know some of you can prefer the foot brake, dude, all good. But if you give the handbrake a shot, a true shot, I think a lot of people will be converts on it. Let's nitpick now. What could they have done better? I'll call the easy one first, battery. We're always going to want more battery. So whether they can maybe provide us with like an external one we can carry on our backpack or something like that, but I think they know is the biggest area they can improve. But beyond the obvious, if there's any other way they can start just reducing some weight on the bike. I don't feel it when I ride, but I do feel it putting on the stand, which that's not an issue, but the more weight we can reduce, the longer battery life we're going to get as a result of that. Not a ton, but we'll get some, and just an easier bike to ride for it. After that, I mean, it's kind of hard to pick out a few other spots. What comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, we're really nitpicking here, but grips. It still comes with these really tough, obnoxious grips. So I think the grips need to go.
For sure. Or at least pair up with ODI. They make some really good lock-on grips.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the grips would be a good starting point. But man, it's so hard to nitpick. Again, I would kind of tag team to what you were saying. Reduce some weight a little bit, but they kind of did that with the titanium bolt and axle kit option for I want to say a whopping $600, because I feel like if you were to spec all that out to other titanium dirt bike companies out there, I feel like it is a reasonably priced kit.
For sure.
You do get, I think it's the full body kit bolts. You do get all of the axles as well, all the bolts for the shock as well. So it's a really nice touch. And for $600, I feel like for some people it's a hard no. I think for other people's it's an immediate yes.
I also know I can cut 2 pounds by using the bathroom before I ride, but NTI is just cool. You guys know, if you watch this channel a lot, we love titanium here. We use it a lot in our suspension parts. We just love that it doesn't rust. Just, we won't get into it, but we're big fans of Thai. So I think that's cool they have that option as well. But yeah, man, I mean, it's really hard to nitpick this bike beyond it's not a gas bike. So if you're a gas purist enthusiast, I get it. We got a lot of awesome gas stuff coming your way, like 2025 Honda 250R Works Edition stuff. So we're still all about that, but you know, we got to give fair attention to the new stuff that's out and where this market may possibly go in the future, because it seems like things are going that way. But again, hats off to Stark Varg. I'm pumped on you guys being in the industry, what you're doing. You're employing some awesome people. Everybody that we have met that works for Stark, such as Justin Belrose, Ryan Ritter. I believe some people we've talked to over email have all just been fantastic, and they come off as just legit enthusiasts like ourselves. So if that's everybody behind the scenes building this company and product, I can see why it's coming out as well as it is.
Well, great talking point, JB. I think that's going to wrap it up. Comment down below what's your favorite feature of the all-new Stark Varg EX, and let us know if we missed anything. There's a lot to cover with this new bike, so if there's a talking point that JB or myself did not touch on, go ahead and blast us in the comments below. It's our job to bring you guys and be the most transparent suspension company in the biz, and I feel like we're doing that. Off to a good start with that.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always.